We're having a nice conversation with Coach Wannstedt on the Score Hotline, brought to you by Atturo, your all-weather tire, Atturo.com. And, Coach, do you like the group they put together? What's your take on where they're at? A week after the hiring, they're already kind of getting things together. They got an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator. They've got generational guys. They've brought in some assistant coaches, and they've got some more hires to make.
Yeah, I like it. I'll tell you why. I think Ben's done a nice job of, on defense, he's got a guy, obviously Dennis Allen, that's an experienced defensive guy, but he's got an ex-head coach that things are going to come up, obviously, the first few years that are new to him, the decisions he's going to have to make, situations, whether it be on the field, off the field. It's nice to have a sounding board. I like that. And the offensive coordinator, everything I hear about the guy, he's an up-and-comer, there's no question. But, Ben's going to run the offense. Ben's going to call the plays. So this guy's going to be really helpful as far as when the decisions are made on offense. This is how I would see it playing out. And now it's got to be put on paper, and it's got to be inserted, and it's got to be organized. That's what this guy will be doing. And then on game day, it'll be Ben's eyes in the sky, as we say. And I've always thought you could see things a lot better up in the press box where you got everything in front of you, on paper and the computers now and everything as compared to the field. So I like his hires. I think as long as he lets Dennis Allen bring in a few defensive guys, which I think he's doing, that really saved him some time of having to explain the defense. I think they're off to a great start.
Declan Doyle comes with Sean Payton's stamp of approval, Dave, but I do wonder, he gets a lot of attention for his age. He's 28 years old. What do you think about that relative inexperience in a job, even though he won't be calling the plays? And did you ever hire a coordinator under the age of 30?
I don't believe so. No, I did not. I'm trying to go back and think about it now. No, but I was 28 when I was calling defenses at Oklahoma State. It was a college game, but it's all relative, and I did all the calls, so I made the decision. So, but this guy's not going to be doing that. Trust me. This is going to be Ben's offense. Ben's going to be making the decisions. And so I think the age thing does not bother me. It really doesn't, because the most important thing is having somebody that's thinking like Ben's thinking, anticipating like he's thinking, and I think that's what he hired. That's why he hired this guy.
Yeah, I think, generally speaking, what do you think is the most important position, Coach, for a head coach? You had Tony with you in all your stops. You guys have a close relationship. Is it the offensive line coach that really gets a team going? Is it the defensive line coach? You've had plenty of those over the years. Yeah,
I would look at it this way. Offense, the way the game is changed and the rules have changed, and amount of time that you can practice with pads and scrimmage and be live contact, offensive line is the most important, because you're getting guys that are doing less in college and less in high school. I see it with my grandsons. They don't do anything. Very little live contact. So the only way you can get better in the offensive line and defensive line is having the pads on and doing live work. You can't go out and catch passes or throw passes or do ball drills and stuff like that as an offensive defensive lineman. So I would say the offensive lineman, the biggest thing on defense, I always felt like I needed to have one of my defensive coaches, and it was always Clarence Brooks. It was Butch Davis when we were in the early days at Miami and Dallas, and then it was Clarence Brooks at the Dolphins and the Bears, where if things were going bad on defense and you needed to upset the Gatorade table during the heat of the game, you needed somebody that could do that, okay? And the players would respect. And so, I don't know. Maybe you do that now and you get sued from the players, Mully. I don't know, Maybe that's maybe that's a violation of the players, the new players agreement. I don't know, but I always wanted one guy that when I could say, hey, God, I remember both of those guys several times. Hey, we got to get their attention, get them together, and get them. And boy, they go over there, and you just knew. I never wanted to see what they were saying or doing, but you knew it was happening.
Dave, help us understand something about Ben Johnson and the way he will work with Ryan Poles. He clearly is the guy in the building with the most power because he's got the highest salary, or at least that's the perception. Whether they go down to the Senior Bowl this week and watch practice or whether they're grinding tape before the draft, how will that work? And you're a guy that, as a head coach, had a lot of say in personnel matters. What emboldens a coach to be that guy, and how much does that dynamic matter between Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles when they are deciding what traits they like and what prospects they like?
Well, I tell you what, I think I give Ryan Poles credit because I guarantee you that there was some compromise here and that there wasn't there with Fluke. And from that standpoint, I mean, Ryan Poles and his team are going to do the best job of evaluating guys. The biggest thing for the head coach is saying, I need a tight end that can block, or I need a defensive pass rusher. This is how I see my team and what I kind of need, Ryan. And he doesn't have time to be watching the film and deciding really, at the end of the day, who that best guy might be. That's where the trust and the work's going to come. So Ryan's looking at this on the same lens, and he comes in and says, hey, that pass rusher, this is the best guy out there, and we can get a contract done with him and so forth. So I think that and I had Rick Spillman, and I had George Payton, and obviously Mark Hatley. I wish I would have had Hats longer. So I've been around, back at the Dolphins. It was Tom Brotz and some older guys. So Gil Brandt at the Cowboys. I've been around some really, really good general managers, and that's always been the even Jimmy, for the reputation he's got of single-handedly picking and trading every player. I sat next to him in every draft, and he would turn to those scouts and say, boy, I really like this guy. Everything you guys are telling me and a little bit of film that I saw on him, we really need a guy like him. Am I missing something? And they would say, no, Coach, what you're seeing and what you're wanting, I mean, that's kind of who he is. Okay, let's take him. So they got to depend on each other. And I'm sure that they had that plan of Ben saying, this is how many of each position I need, and I'm looking for quick offensive linemen, or I'm looking for the biggest guys I can get. And Ryan's got to give and take with that and go find those guys.
I'm curious, Dave, when we talk about putting together a coaching staff, do you rely on anyone? I mean, did you consult with Jimmy about guys he thought were good coaches around the league? You must have known plenty of people over the years. How do you go about that process? And maybe the good thing this time around is the Bears ended up getting the second coach hired in the cycle, and they're getting to coaches earlier than a lot of times in the past.
Yeah, you know what I really like about Ben, and it's kind of the way that I did it, and going back to what Jimmy did, and Johnny Majors, who I played for and coached for at Pitt when we won that national championship, he had guys around him that, you got to have one or two sounding boards. In other words, if I didn't know the guy personally and have a relationship with him, or it was Tony Wise on my staff that I could turn to and say, does this guy fit in with us? And, you needed – I was kind of that guy with Jimmy when we hired, the Norv Turner, Dave, and I said, hey, I worked with Norv. Norv fits in, and I see Ben hiring guys, whether they're young or where he's getting them from. He has ties in, either at the Dolphins or he's crossed paths with them, at this thing or wherever, and he has a relationship with these guys, and he knows what he's hiring. I really think that's valuable. And there's a lot of smart coaches out there, and a lot of that you want the guys that are going to be good staff guys that are going to work the hours that you want to work and how you want to go about it, and have the character that you're looking for, and I think that's what Ben's doing. I think he's going about it the right way. Now, whether he's referring to anybody else, I don't know. The Paytons or the Campbells, I don't know. But that's kind of how I was brought up, and that realm, and you know, and I hired one or two guys in my whole career that it was third-party recommendations, and it really never worked out. Never really worked out. So
Dave,
whatever that's worth, yeah. And I think you do that with all jobs. That's how you get the most productive people.
Curious what your perspective is as a kind of old school football lifer and in the coaching industry. All you guys have agents, and we heard from Rick Smith on the Bears Banter podcast talking to Bill Zimmerman, be extremely candid and open, and I think he pulled the curtain back a little bit more than anybody expected about the process and negotiating with the Bears and his view of the Bears now under Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles. How does that go over with the client? Do you want your agent to be that open with the media? Do you think it even was something that Ben Johnson noticed? And how would you respond if you had an agent that was as public about the negotiation and that process as Rick Smith was about dealing with the Bears?
Well, if he's going to say something positive, I wouldn't have a problem with it. You know, I wouldn't want him saying, "Oh boy, we hoodwinked. You know, we pulled one over on the Bears." You know, Vegas didn't even offer us or anything like that. God, I sure as heck wouldn't want that. But if he comes out and says, "I chose the Bears because of Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles and the history," or whatever, you know, that's fine. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But yeah, that's always a tough thing for the head coaches. I would get the guys lined up. I remember my first staff with the Bears with Joe Pendry and Ivan Fears and Ron Turner and Mike Stula, all the guys that I hired. I hated to talk about the money. I always wished they had someone to talk to because, you know, that's just an uncomfortable thing. I always thought it was. And, you know, so the agent thing doesn't bother me as far as them using them to negotiate their contracts. But as far as the media, if they're going to say something positive, find it. Otherwise, you know, don't pat yourself on the back and tell us how you took advantage of us.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, I said to David, that read like an off-the-record conversation that somehow was completely on the record. Because sometimes you hear stuff like that, but you certainly wouldn't get it, you know, on any kind of a media outlet.
Yeah. Well, Mark Davis came out yesterday. I read it and said we never offered Ben Johnson that we got our guy. You know, Pete Carroll. Good. Okay, come on. You know, you kidding me?
Yeah.
You shouldn't. He said it yesterday. I read it.
Yeah. So, Dave, help us out. So here you are. This is just the beginning of the process, right? He's going to have to spend a lot of time with the quarterback. Presumably, you know, J.T. Barrett will spend a lot of time with the quarterback. Ditto, the head coach, the offensive contributor that he brought in also from Detroit. Antoine Randall is the wide receivers coach, but you want to. I know there are limitations for when you meet and how you do it. How is the communication work in the offseason? Will they communicate? Will he send them some plays, some ideas, some tape? How will that work before they get together?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what they can do in person as far as the rules and what they can get. No, not what they can do, what they can get away with.
Right.
No, playbooks are going to be these guys at the key positions. You know, the defense, I wouldn't worry about that. They'll get bored anyway in these OTAs. So you'll get there going when they get here. But the quarterback is the main guy.